One of the most significant sticking points I am aware of for people misinterpreting the timing of the rapture is in Matthew 24, the discussion of the elect. And I'm actually going to do a find for this and go a little bit bigger. There are, as we can see up here, 3 references to elect in Matthew 24. And I think this is where, in this conversation about the elect and the flight of the remnant and things like that, this is where people get confused about the elect conversation. So I want to address this specifically. Trying to get some things put in context about some specific places where people go awry with regard to understanding the pre-trib rapture as opposed to, say, post-trib or some other thing. Regarding Revelation 20, I've addressed 2 things specific to that already today, so we're going to take on the elect here. This is specifically about the, I'm going to guess, verse 31. In regards to the gathering of the elect from the 4 winds from one end of heaven to the other, that's where people believe the rapture occurs. Jesus, when he returns at the second coming is here. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. All the tribes of the earth shall mourn when they see the Son of Man coming in the cloud of heaven with power and great glory. The sign of the Son of Man is the glorious appearing. And then when he returns, he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. That's the same voice that he was shown to have in Revelation 1. John was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, heard a great voice as of a trumpet. Behind him, he turned and he saw a vision of the glorified Christ. So this is the same thing that Jesus is previewing as John did in Revelation 1 of the glorified Christ on the Lord's day, the great sound of a trumpet. It's the Lord's voice, and he commands his angels to gather his elect from the 4 winds from one end of heaven to the other. The sister passage to this is actually found in Deuteronomy 30, verses 1 through 5. The elect, however, have been mentioned 2 times previous to that in this chapter, and it specifically regards the remnant who's going to flee at the midpoint of the 70th week. We should know this because up here there's the preaching of the everlasting gospel, which is tied to trumpet 7, the days of the voice of the 7th angel when he should begin to sound. The mystery of God, or the revelation of God worldwide, occurs, which is the life of Christ from birth to ascension. It's preached by the angel, and there's a great wonder in heaven depicting it. Which leads into the reactionary event, which is the abomination of desolation, which then leads into the flight of the remnant, which is what the first mention of the elect is in regard to. And it says that if the days in Jerusalem were not shortened by their flight out, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, or the remnant's sake, those days shall be shortened. So we get into the question of who are the elect. Now, I already started from the back end and told you Deuteronomy 30 is where you're going to find the sister passage to the gathering of Israel back into the land for the purpose of kingdom. But how do we know for sure that the elect is a reference to Israel? Because there's a lot of confusion where people say, no, the elect is the church. There are different people who are considered elect, and it all goes to context. So what I'm going to show you after this is the validation that the only time the elect has been addressed prior to this point is in the Old Testament in regard to Israel. When you then get here, the only reference you have to the elect in the whole Bible up to this point regards Israel. There should be no question about who this regards, but there is, I understand that. However, this correlates specifically to the midpoint of the 70th week. So you have the preaching of the everlasting gospel previewed in Revelation 10. Right here, and it actually occurring in Revelation 12 and 14. You have the abomination of desolation, which is Revelation 13:5, the flight of the remnant, which is actually depicted in Revelation 12, a couple of different places, because that's when Michael's going to stand up, and there's going to be a war in heaven. Michael's going to protect them. He's going to be the wings of the great eagle, which get Israel into her place, where she's going to be nourished for a time times half a time from the face of the serpent. That's actually mentioned twice in Revelation 12. But from Revelation 10 through 15, there are 7th trumpet, i.e. mid-trib things addressed. But the abomination of desolation is in Revelation 13, the flight of the remnant in Revelation 12, and Specifically, this is a reference to Revelation 13. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets. That's your beast 1 and beast 2 in Revelation 13. And shall show great signs and wonders. That's your beast 2, in so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. That's literally taken directly from Revelation 13 regarding beast 2's direct of worship, the beast's image, or receiving his mark in Revelation 13. And then it says, don't be deceived, because I've told you where the sign of the second coming is going to be, which is as lightning cometh from the east and shineth even to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So if there's someone telling you that there's someone you have to worship who isn't giving you that specific sign, don't believe it. The elect are the remnant of Israel in every context here. And then obviously here, when Jesus returns at the second coming, he's going to gather back into Israel everyone who was essentially driven out to save life and limb. Elect. There are 4 times where this is in the Old Testament, and they're all in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 42:1. Behold my servant whom I uphold, mine elect, in whom my soul delighteth. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. Let's go to Isaiah 42. Who's that talking about? In the context of Isaiah 42, if you read through the whole chapter and you just do some reference work, this is actually talking about Jesus. So in this context, the mine elect is talking about Jesus. Isaiah 45. This is really the most significant reference to Israel specifically being the elect that is in view in Matthew 24, because it comes right out and says it. Isaiah 45:4, for Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect. I have even called thee by thy name, I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. And then these 2 other references in Isaiah are chapter 65, and this most specifically talks about Israel inheriting kingdom. This is a chapter that talks about the return of Jesus Christ at the second coming, the judgment of the nations, and then going into kingdom. Isaiah 65:9, I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob, and out of Judah an inheritor of my mountains, and mine elect shall inherit it. Talking about Judah and Jacob, clearly that's going to be a reference to Israel. And my servant shall dwell there. In his holy mountain Zion, yes. And then Isaiah 65:22, they shall not build and another inhabit, they shall not plant and another eat, for as the days of a tree are the days of my people, and mine elect, Israel, shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Notice the next 3 references are the ones that we talked about in Matthew 24. There, with the exception of Jesus, who this is actually talking about, there is no reference prior to this point of elect being anyone other than God's chosen people, Israel, the natural seed of Israel. While I understand that there are references after that to election under New Covenant and talking about the church in different aspects, really what it goes back to discussing the elect in Matthew 24 in those 3 verses and in the Old Testament is Romans 9:11 to explain. For the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. You are talking about none other than the remnant of Israel who will be spared by their flight out of Jerusalem. For the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. By their flight out, that's not a shortening of the number of days of the 70th week or the hours per day of the 70th week. It is their time in Jerusalem shortened by their flight out of the city. The wings of the great eagle Michael take them into their place, where they will be nourished for a time times half a time. Reason being, because if the beast and the false prophet could get to them, they would be deceived, and there should no flesh be saved. Meaning either they would die physically, because they refuse to worship the beast's image or receive his mark. But the implication here is that they would be deceived, and they would do that, and they would die spiritually, because they would then become irredeemable, like we're told in Revelation 14 of everyone who worships the beast's image or takes his mark. And then, because they are spared, They will be brought back into the land to set up shop in the kingdom where Israel will be set atop the nations. So really what you're looking for is Romans 9:11 as an explanation, and probably from the Old Testament, Isaiah 45:4 is the best. But you have two other references in Isaiah 65 that tell you that the elect is a reference to Israel. Because that's your only guidepost to the point of Matthew 24, there should never have been a question that the elect in view here is Israel. I realize that there are questions and there is confusion. There should not be, because the only other references to this point, with the exception of this one who is simply talking about Jesus being elect, yeah, clearly he was elect. But the only other references to that point prior to these verses in Matthew 24 are talking about Israel. And again, you have the explanation given here in Romans 9:11. Does that mean that the church is less elect? No, it means that they are outside the context of Matthew 24, which we should already know because that's a 70th week specific chapter up to and including the second coming, which doesn't have a dang thing to do with us. So while I do realize that this is a conversation that confuses many, people like to take it out of context, just like they do Revelation 20 and 1 Thessalonians 4 and the rapture on the whole. There's no actual reason to do that, and Isaiah proves that point. So hopefully that has clarified some things for some people, but that's all I've got for you.